welcome to Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangia. I have today with me a civil servant under whose watch as Secretary, Ministry of Coal, India held its first ever coal block auctions. We saw a jump in production of Coal India Limited's production in the year 2015 and 2016, which Coal Minister then had promised that we'll produce 1 billion tons of coal by 2019. But somehow the coal production could not keep up, and we are back to a time where power plants across the country are facing shortage of coal. Can we still achieve the 1 billion ton coal production target? And what has been the impact of UDAY, which is the government's much touted Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana? To discuss all of this, I welcome one of India's vocal, free and frank civil servants, Mr. Anil Swarup. Mr. Swarup, welcome to our program. So, your opening statement in your recent article in the Economic Times piqued my interest, where you said, and I quote, "The power sector is in serious trouble. Non-performing assets among power generating companies are mounting. There is a shortage of coal. Plant load factor is down to 58%. Distribution companies are in bad shape, and new power purchase agreements are few and far in between." More than piquing my interest, it worries me.
Indeed, it is a worrying signal. Power sector, there are problems. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And if I remember correctly, a parliamentary standing committee has also pointed out the problems that the power sector faces. So what I have stated is something which I believe is true.
Okay. Going to the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, it was to provide much needed relief to the power sector. And I remember at that time you were Secretary, Ministry of Coal. Coal production was going up, and the coming of this scheme was touted as that state governments will take over the debt of the discoms, and then more PPAs can come in because the power distribution companies in the states, which are run by the state governments, will have no liabilities to pay. How was this supposed to work in theory, and how has it worked in practice? Could you explain?
See, I was there till 2016. I think UDAY was a brilliant idea. It was a brilliant idea because it not merely focused on financial rearrangement. That was one of the factors that would have given the space to the power sector to improve. The task had to be undertaken primarily by the state governments. And that is why some of the state governments that did take some initiatives probably did reasonably well. But unfortunately, most of the states did not take the second part very seriously. Whereas the loan was passed on to the state government, there were a number of other actions that were to be taken by the state governments, or primarily the discoms, in terms of reducing AT&C losses, in terms of metering. All these aspects were to be done by the state governments. It's unfortunate. The information that I have now is a number of state governments haven't done what they ought to have done to the extent they should have done. It's not that they have not taken initiative. Almost all these state governments have taken initiative. But probably the distance that they should have traveled, they haven't traveled. I still believe that they can still be done, provided the state take it seriously and get down to what is mandated under UDAY.
So this UDAY primarily, as you say, faltered at the state government level.
Primarily, see, you look at how it works. The central government was primarily a role of a facilitator in terms of creating an enabling system wherein the loans that were taken by the discoms could be taken over by the state government, and central government did play a role of a facilitator in negotiating with even RBI, looking at various provisions that were required to ensure that. So all that was done by the central government. The primary task of taking it forward was that of the state governments, and states have to play that role.
Okay. You said, and I would like to quote, that extensive field visits or intensive interaction with the stakeholders were adopted when these schemes were designed. But little effort was made to understand the problems that these discoms faced. They could have learned from states like Gujarat. You write about Gujarat in your article extensively, where UDAY or the preform of UDAY happened much before it meant national. Could you please elaborate on that?
See, when you come up with a concept or an idea, if it's a pure idea, then people will wonder how it would happen. In this country, we had that example in Gujarat. The Gujarat model of power sector was amazing. It turned around that sector in that state in terms of metering, in terms of feeder review, feeder understanding, separating of feeders for agriculture and industrial and commercial sectors. All that helped them understand how and where the power was going. Power audit or energy audit could be done, and then correctives could be taken. The AT&C losses came down phenomenally. There was price rationalization. If you look at the pricing that is done in Gujarat, it's a lesson for other states. And people say that it is politically difficult. I don't think, I mean, Mr. Modi clearly demonstrated that if you continue to do good work in a particular sector, you don't lose out politically. So it's wrong to say that you lose out politically. So Gujarat was a classic example from which many other states could have learned. I don't know how much they learned, because I did not follow that process as to whether they did or did not. Because I do believe that had they learned from what happened in Gujarat, they would have certainly succeeded. It had happened there, it should have happened in other states.
Okay. Speaking of Gujarat, you also said that more time should have been spent on understanding why the AT&C losses happened and why they were reduced in states like Gujarat. Could you explain that point a bit?
See, what happens is when there is a problem, normally what we do is we scratch the surface. We don't go into the depth of the problem on why of it. Let me give the example of coal here to explain to you when I say to go into the details of the problem and understand the ground reality. Everyone thought that in coal, scams were a problem.
Okay.
Scams were symptomatic of the shortage of coal. The real problem was shortage of coal.
That's all.
Imagine, no, we'll have to go layer by layer.
Yes.
This is the first layer.
Okay.
The first layer is that there were scams, but the cause of the scams was shortage of coal. If there were no shortage of coal, there wouldn't have been scams. People would not have been scrambling for blocks. Now, the next question is, why is there a shortage of coal? India sits on 300 billion tons of coal. Our requirement is 800 million. So you go to the next stage. Why there is a shortage of coal? Shortage of coal because problems in acquiring land, problems in getting environment forest clearance, and problems in transporting coal, because this coal exists in areas which are inaccessible. So these were the three primary factors that determine the production of coal. Then go to the next layer. You have to keep going down. Why is there a problem in acquisition of land? The problem in acquisition of land was there because probably the good points of acquisition of land under Coal-Bearing Act were not conveyed to the farmer. I don't know whether you're aware that unlike usual land acquisition, under the Coal-Bearing Act, if you take 2 acre or more land of a farmer, 1 ward of that farmer can get employment in Coal India. Now, if you package and market it appropriately, who would not want to give land to Coal India? So you do that, you get more land. Similarly, for environment forest, we must understand where the problem is. The problem is not in Government of India for environment forest clearance, though ultimate clearance happens in Government of India. The problem is in the field because the proposal gets moved in a state government. So you have to go down to the states, sit with them, convey a value proposition and get them on board. Tell them that if this clearance happens or this groundwork happens, ultimately the state will benefit. So once you go to the depth of a cause, then you will be able to find solution. I would believe that type of intensive engagement with the state governments in terms of first trying to understand the nature of the problem and then attempting to find a solution, perhaps was not done to an extent as far as Uday was concerned. This is my conjecture given by what actually happened thereafter. Because unlike coal, the solution did not exist elsewhere. Its solution had to be found for the entire country. Uday had an advantage of a solution in existence, of a how of a problem. So first you understand what is the problem, then you understand how the problem, the why of the problem, and you find solution. All these were available in Gujarat. I wish somebody, and I hope somebody would go there, to go into the details, treat Gujarat as a success story and understand the how of it and replicate it elsewhere.
Interesting point by you, sir, but taking this forward, you also said on account of poor conditions of the DISCOMs, no new PPAs are being floated. For common men who watch this program, I would like you to explain. A, you're actually saying there is surplus power that we have. The DISCOMs can't supply you 24 hours power because they can't recover the cost of power because people don't pay bills. Then you also say that the government via the Saubhagya Yojana, which actually you don't mention, but I am asking you, the government's intent is that everyone gets a connection of the cable connection. But if the power doesn't flow through it, the connection merely would be useless. So how do you see that these things can still be solved? What would be your...
So let us understand the two issues and the connectivity between the two. It is imperative to connect every individual. That is happening under Saubhagya.
Yes.
But you have to have power to provide
Yes.
them. If you don't have power, then you will not be able to provide. Let me give it a context. When we say that we have surplus power, and there's no demand for power, I don't think we are making the right statement.
No.
The per capita consumption of power today in India is equivalent to the late 19th and early 20th century per capita consumption in the US. So that is the latent demand that we have. So it's as bad as that. And if are unable to meet even that demand, then there is a serious problem.
Okay.
So to say that power is sufficient is incorrect. I don't think we have sufficient power available because the latent demand is not getting articulated because DISCOMs are not in a position, the more they sell, the more they lose. So if that is the case, they're not going to ask for more power. So what really needs to be done is, first, generate so much power. There's issues for that. And secondly, create an enabling features or create enabling competence in the DISCOMs to articulate the demand that is latent. So both have to be done. More power generation as well as creation of more demand. What is happening is that demand is there, but it is not getting articulated because DISCOMs do not have the financial wherewithal. And secondly, as they examine it, they see that they're going to lose more as they give more and more power. So until as the pricing is done appropriately, until as the power theft is stopped, the conditions of DISCOMs.
Mr. Swarup, I may like to interject here on pricing. The new power policy that's going to be act in the form of the Electricity Act speaks of one single price for power. You spent your career in Uttar Pradesh as a civil servant. Does India need a single price for power, or should it be differentiated on different classes of individuals? There is a school of thought which says, why should commercial power producers pay more? And the other school of thought says, why should poor get electricity for free? Why not just have one single rate which is being currently talked of?
You know, let me explain my personal point of view. My point of view is that the price should be determined based on the cost or the power that is. You determine a price. Thereafter, if you want to subsidize somebody, let that subsidy flow in rather than the DISCOM being pushed to have differential power rates. I think it's creating chaos. Because the moment you have these differential power rates, everyone wants to come to a position where they get cheaper power.
Yes.
That's my personal view is there has to be single price. Thereafter, if you want to subsidize a particular segment, or if you want to subsidize somebody, give the direct benefit transfer to him. Let him get that money instead of trying to cross-subsidize within DISCOMs, which has created all the chaos.
I'm not talking about the results now, but I'm talking about the Prime Minister himself personally articulating the power sector so many times in his speeches. Incidentally, I also read about that DISCOMs have been turned around earlier. Narendra Modi as Gujarat Chief Minister proved that good economics make good politics is what you said.
Yes.
So the government's intent is there.
Yes.
Even then, you say that there is intent, but there is no result.
No, let's try and understand.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to explain.
Yeah.
I think the Uday scheme was extremely well-intentioned.
Yes.
The Prime Minister was totally committed to it.
Yes.
He still is.
Yes.
And some believe that some of it has worked, which is true. Some of it has worked. But probably it has not traveled the distance. Let us try and understand why it didn't travel the distance that it should.
Yes.
That's something. My understanding is the intensity to which the engagement centre should have had with the state governments did not happen. Why? Because in my understanding, if a good model exists somewhere in the country, it is my job sitting at the centre to roadshow it to the other state, help that state to replicate that model. If the state were to do it on its own, they will do it.
So you can't merely formulate a policy and say good things will happen. You will have to continually engage with the states.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the example of what is happening in the Swasth Bharat mission. I have a totally different example. The reason why it's happening is that the centre is totally engaged with the state government.
Okay. At this juncture, we're just short of time. So we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Just before the break, Mr. Swarup explained to us the genesis of the problem and why the outreach to the states in terms of engagement with the state governments to explain them why Gujarat was successful. Case in point, they filed 2 lakh cases, criminal cases of people who did not pay up their electricity bills. That was decisive action that a state government did, and the chief minister won elections again after that, which shows that as Mr. Swarup said, good economics makes good politics. Mr. Swarup.
So what I was saying was that we must try and understand if a particular thing has not happened in a particular area, why it has not happened. My reading is, and I may be wrong, that the engagement with the state governments, the intensity of engagement was not as much as it is probably happening in Swasth Bharat Abhiyan, where the engagement is extremely intensive. The secretary himself traveling to every state, going to the areas, trying to find out what is right, what is wrong, showing examples of other states to that states, to other states. So that sort of an engagement is required. Again, we have a successful energy model in Gujarat. We have a successful policy model implementation in Swasth Bharat Abhiyan. What we need to do is to understand if things have not happened, then why haven't they happened, and make out a plan. I still very firmly believe that it can happen.
Okay, so Mr. Swarup firmly believes that this still can happen. But moving ahead, you've spoken of specifics, separate feeder lines, auditing, strong action against defaulters, and pricing are some of the issues that will need to be addressed by other states also. It will require time and effort and may not provide good material for headlines. That's an importance because it's no big announcement. You have to do it day in and day out for years together for the results to come in. Do you think because this is not an announcement, it somehow is not being able to be pushed through because there are other important priorities?
I don't know what is the reason behind it, but okay. My hope lies from the current team in the Power Ministry.
Yeah.
I think they have one of the finest officers. The officer has worked with me in the Coal Ministry. He was instrumental in turning around the coal sector. And I'm sure Ajay Bhalla has in him the ability to turn around the power sector also, to take Uday to its logical conclusion.
Okay. You made a very interesting point, which you also shared this with me. You made it in the article that these plans can't be monitored from Delhi. The state governments and all stakeholders have to have a buy-in. This is critical for the success of any plan. It could happen in coal, it can happen in power as well. And you still believe discoms can be turned around in India. And though we are a 2 trillion economy, we are still a nation of 1/6 of humanity. There are problems with money. You still believe discoms can be done?
See, I am a diehard optimist. Yes. I believe things can happen. They can be made to happen. And what gives me hope is what has happened. Gujarat gives me hope in the energy segment. It was as bad or perhaps worse than some of these states that we have today.
Yes.
It was turned around. All we need to do, and I have been saying that time and again, sit and understand how did it happen. I mean, it is not rocket technology. It is visible, it has happened. Precisely work out those detailed plans in each of the states and it will work.
And I'm talking of now other problems which you raised in your article, which was power plants running short of fuel in the country. And you said this is not 2014, it's 2018, which clearly you meant that it shouldn't have happened today. In a way, since you had the helm of the sector and all these PSUs reported to you, are you feeling a bit, what you can say, not that happy or optimistic simply because the momentum that had started sort of tapered off by 2008?
I don't know what is the reason behind it. I have not analyzed it.
Yes.
But I do believe, and as I get to know from all the data that is available,
yes,
that there is shortage of coal.
Yes.
Which surprises me because there was sufficient momentum for it to continue.
Yes.
Something went wrong somewhere. I don't know what it is. Someone has to analyze
I'm
it.
only interested in this because the Prime Minister held a meeting recently and the Prime Minister brainstormed that where is India losing its foreign exchange? What are the unessential imports that India does? And why is India's import bill so much? Consumer durables, mobile phones were one of the things that came up. Petroleum, of course, is a necessary evil, but has a large import bill. But surprisingly, coal was also part of the discussion. I am told that coal generates a lot of bill, but we are sitting on the 300 billion tons of coal. Somebody who sat in the secretariat making policy, do you feel that India could have saved those billions of dollars had this coal, or if commercial coal had happened by now?
I don't really know whether commercial mining would immediately solve the problem.
Okay.
Though that's the way forward.
Okay.
For future, I think that's a brilliant decision that the government has taken in terms of commercial mining.
Yes.
But actual mining, even if the blocks are auctioned now, will happen 4 or 5 years down the line.
Yes.
So there would be no immediate solution as far as availability of coal in the immediate future is concerned. I think in the immediate future, what has to happen is twofold. Number one, the Coal India production needs to be ramped up. And secondly, the blocks that are stuck up, which were auctioned, which could not get going on account of variety of issues, they need to go up. So we were visualizing about 40 million tons from the coal blocks that were auctioned. I'm not very sure whether we're anywhere close to that number. Okay. Similarly, coal production in Coal India has increased, but it has not kept pace with the demand that we have. So consequently, after 2 years of imports coming down, we again see imports going up, which I think is a very serious matter because sitting on such large quantities of coal,
we are wasting precious foreign exchange. This gives me a chance to ask you one more question. There are now murmurs in this government too talking that is auction really the solution for all the ills? The auction, as it says, was mandated by the Supreme Court, and the government of the day implemented it. Do you think that there, in a sense, needs to be a rethink on the right thing, or do you think auction is something that you would go by any day?
See, auction was a separate issue altogether.
Okay.
Everyone thought that was the coal story, the coal block auction. I had always said that coal story was not coal block auction. It was improvement of a process. The real coal story was the improvement in coal production. That was the real coal story. Not meant because, again, it was not, controversial enough to be highlighted.
Yes.
But it was a routine thing. Coal production increased. Not many people noticed. It was only later that they realized that coal production had gone up beyond anyone's imaginations. So much so that I remember in 2016, there was not a single power plant which was critical for want of supply of coal. It was quite an achievement in the sense that coal production had increased. That was coal story. As far as the auction of coal blocks are concerned, I had always felt that it was basically demonstrating that a transparent process could be put in place for use of natural resources.
So I get a sense from you that had the Coal India Limited kept up on that growth path, which it had started on in 2015-16, today we would not have been facing all these problems.
I would believe that probably not as much as we are facing. Maybe if the demand has gone up to an extent that it won't meet. But my hunch is, if we had kept that trend of growth which we have, to give you gross numbers,
yes.
I think in 14-15, the increase in coal production was 34 million tons.
Yes.
Incremental growth, which was more than the cumulative growth over previous 3 years.
Yes.
And on that, we had another additional growth of 44 million tons in this subsequent year. So I think the coal production was doing well. If that had kept pace, if it had increased at the same pace, probably we would not have had this
You
problem.
also went so far as to point out that the coal scam was nothing but a product of scarcity.
No, I wouldn't say nothing but a product, but I have always believed scams happen in times of scarcity, especially for commodities.
Yes.
Imagine a scenario, if you have surplus coal, why would people run for coal blocks?
You mean if Coal India is producing 1 billion tons, everybody has it.
See, look at how coal block auction. In the 4th round of coal block auction, there were no takers because sufficient coal was available.
Yes.
Coal mining is not an easy job. I don't think people will run for coal mines. If coal becomes available at an appropriate price,
yes.
Why would anyone acquire those mines? And nobody coming forward for the 4th round of coal block auction was a reflection of sufficiency of coal within the country.
And you have spoken of now procedural issues. One procedural issue which interests me is the web-based monitoring portal, which you spoke about based on successful model of project monitoring group, which you headed, was to set up and monitor, pursue various clearances. How do you see can be operationalized in this whole sector?
It's there. This portal is there.
Yes.
My suggestion would be
yes.
that activate it to an extent that it should have been activated.
So which means everything exists. You just need to...
Absolutely, you have to get moving. I don't think you have to create anything. They're there. The systems are there. Make them operational.
Okay. For today, I would want to take your final comments on how much of distance have we traveled in the coal and power story in India as a democracy. It is very important. We can ask the person who has to study even in an oil lamp, even today in the village of Uttar Pradesh or other villages where there may be a connection because Saubhagya is there, but for all you know, there may not be power for 18 hours a day. And how much distance have we to travel?
I think phenomenal work has been done in past few years.
Yes.
Saubhagya is a classic example,
yes.
where government has managed to reach out to every person, and soon probably there will be electricity everywhere, or at least the potential to send electricity.
Yes.
Without that, even if you have power, you won't be able to take it there.
Yes.
I personally thought that was more difficult than coal production.
Yes.
Because you are reaching out to every household. How difficult it is, that has been done.
Oh.
That gives me hope that a smaller problem of coal production should be taken care of. If Saubhagya could be done, why can't coal be done?
Okay.
Coal was done even before Saubhagya came into being.
Yes.
But coal somehow lost its way in past couple of years. I think coal can be done. Once you have sufficient amount of coal,
yes.
once you have power generation, then it's only transmitting that to those people. So phenomenal amount of work has been done. And what really needs to be done is, there are gaps here and there which are unnecessarily creating greater problems than they are.
Okay.
They can be plugged actually.
Okay. Mr. Swarup, as always, you were free and frank with us. You shared all the points with us, and you surely sounded very optimistic on the sector, though we have been lagging for a bit. But thank you so much for sparing your time for today's episode of Policy and Politics. Looking forward to invite you once again, once the story in coal and power progresses. Thank you.